All right, everybody, welcome. Season 2, Episode 2. Now that's debatable. Up on the screen, you should see a sign up by Relic Media, and my primary co-host is gonna just give us a rundown of what's going on with that and why it's up on the screen, and then we'll get switched over and to our faces and start this debate off.
Yeah, Relic Media has just a new podcast streaming service that we've partnered with. So they're going to be uh, uh, s- um, pushing out a lot of our content. And if you're interested in starting your own podcast and you still have a small audience and you want to reach a large group of people, hit up Relic Media. Try to see if we can get your podcast on that channel. You can contact us, or you can go to the website and uh, get in contact with Relic Media directly. So that is all I want to say about that.
Awesome. Did you want to take us off with an introduction, or do you want me to continue?
Sure. Yeah. Our introduction. Yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about transgender. Thanks for tuning in with us. We've been sitting working out the logistics of this debate for about 2-3 weeks now, and so kind of excited to get started. So Morefreeus, we wanted to let you get your, I guess, fully get your opinion out, and like pretty much just like speak your piece. So give you about like 9 to 10 minutes so you can explain your position, and we'll give you our thoughts on your position.
Okay, sounds good. And I appreciate the opportunity, like I said before. Any opportunity to have open discourse is fantastic for me. So let me just direct the audience's attention to one thing real quick. I'm coming to you anonymously for a reason, because in today's society, this is a very contentious topic, and to a certain degree, it's considered untouchable or unquestionable. And we should be very, very, very careful about things that cannot be discussed, because that is a sign of fascism and that's a sign of totalitarianism. When we cannot have open discourse on topics, we are putting ourselves at risk from being able to understand and discern truth in the reality of the world. So that's my first point. Understand that I'm coming to you anonymously, and that there are retributions that can take place and have taken place in our society for even having these conversations. So that's the first piece. Okay, the second piece is I am not transphobic. I am not homophobic. I have trans friends, and I deeply respect the humanity of all trans people and the circumstance that they find themselves in from an existential standpoint. So this is not me arguing against the morality of transgenderism. This is me looking at the truth, the objective and empirical truth of transgenderism, which is a product or a subsequent product of the conceptual framework of gender fluidity. Okay, so just going to add some context for the situation for all the viewers. Okay, for you and for anyone in the future listening, the year is 2022. We've had multiple human beings, some of them educated in our most highest uh, institutions of academic learning, including Ivy League institutions. These people have testified in front of Congress that men can have babies, that men can have abortions, um, and not only have testified in Congress, but asserted dogmatically in front of Congress. This is an assertion dogmatic, not a proposition, and that's a huge difference. Okay, this is an assertion dogmatically, and when questioned by the Congress, those individuals were instantly accused of speech tantamount to violence. Okay, so that's one piece. Let's fast forward to the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk. Not only was the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk an attempt at restoring freedom of speech, as we all know, there is a robust censorship program in Twitter that censors quote unquote hate speech, to the point where, in an interview of one of the engineers leaving Twitter, he stated that if freedom of speech is tantamount to Nazis questioning transgender people using bathrooms, then basically you've met the mission. In other words, a Twitter employee openly admitted, and you can see this on multiple different forums, but openly admitted as he was leaving the Twitter facility, not only were we censoring people, but if you even question whether a transgender person should be in a locker room with a biological female, then you're a Nazi? Question mark, question mark. Is this even a serious question? Okay, so that's point three. I'm giving you context for the actual world in 2022. We've got women getting impregnated in prison by trans women, and we also have biological women being robbed of the equal opportunity to compete in sports against their biological peers. That's where we're at right now. Okay, so that's where this conversation comes from. So when you say, Morpheus, why do you care? What's the point? What's the big deal? Because whether or not you try to delete or erase or redefine the empirical objective world, the actual effects are still going to be in place. So you can redefine it and you can ignore it, but they're still going to be in place. So now let me move to the more formal argument here. What we are about to debate is something called, it's a conceptual framework called gender fluidity, okay? And if you read the definition of gender fluidity, what the left has tried to do in an academic forum is detach the gender from the biological sex. And I am going to propose that not only is this an attempt that is impossible to obtain, it's flawed in many ways. First of all, if you look at the Oxford definition of man, for instance, what you're going to find is you're going to find the definition adult male human. Okay, so man is an adult male human. That encompasses the biological sex. So that's the first issue, is that that's the traditional Oxford definition. Oxford dictionary definition. And in the gender fluidity conceptual framework, they've redefined it, right? Because they cannot have that relationship. But what if they redefined it as? Well, in the gender fluidity conceptual framework, they've redefined it as man or woman is defined as someone who identifies as man or woman. Now, that's from a logical perspective an issue because it's tautological. It's a tautology, which means it's circular reasoning, which means they do not have the actual definitive terms, attributes, and characteristics to actually properly define the thing. So what you have, in a sense, is you have a gender definition that is detached from the empirical world. So this is my last point, and I'll turn it over to you guys. So what happens is you have a male or a female, right? And their biology and in their empirical characteristics are male or female. And then historically, we call them man and woman. And what you have with transgenderism is you have a female that is born biologically a man, but you have a woman that's born biologically as a male, and what they have in their mind does not correlate or map to the empirical world. Similar to a schizophrenic that has thoughts and ideas about the world that doesn't map to the empirical world. And so in what I'll propose for this debate is that although I will respect a trans woman or a trans man, we have to draw a line in the sand from respecting their humanity and giving them what rights we can, and when those rights transgress on other biological males and females' rights. And that's my position. And I do believe that whether you're a trans man or woman, that you do have gender dysphoria, which is how the psychological literature defines it. You are not a man if you can have babies. You have gender dysphoria if you are a man. You can have babies. You are a female woman, and in your mind you are a man, and that is a dysphoria. That is not, you're not in reality a man. And so I'll pause there, and you guys can comment on everything. Then we can talk more about it.
Cool. So, just want to start at the beginning. So it sounded like you were saying at the beginning that discussing or disagreeing with, I guess, the woke view of you, although you didn't use the word woke, but which I guess what most people consider like the woke view of transgenderism is would be like taboo. Like if you disagree with that, and that I guess people's free speech are being um, impaired via Twitter.
It's not just that it's not just that
So
it's taboo. It's the fact that you will have consequences for your actions. At Google, there
sure.
was an
So
employee that was fired for
okay. So
saying that there's differences biologically between women and men and women.
cool.
That's what I mean.
All right. So like for one, I don't want to get too off topic, but I think your understanding of free speech is incorrect. So first, so free speech doesn't mean you're allowed to say what you want in my house, right? Because it's mine, right? The Twitter servers, they're private. So when if somebody starts going on Twitter and starts saying a bunch of transphobic, homophobic, racist BS, that's not, if when Twitter suspends their account, like that isn't a violation of their free speech. Not by my estimation, because they still have their free speech. They don't have a right to Twitter's platform or any platform. You,
Would you like me to respond to that?
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you
Yeah,
don't.
because
You
I've
can
been
interrupt.
yeah. So I'm not talking about. Um, so there's kind of two pieces of this. Okay, number one, there are people who have genuine concerns about a trans woman sharing a locker with with biological females that happen to have the genitalia of a man. Why is that considered hate speech, and why are people kicked off of Twitter for that?
Well, I mean, because is
And that's
Twitter
the
like
point we're making.
yeah, well, Twitter's a private company. They can do whatever they want. Like if they want to,
Sure,
so like people were
but
there were people, there's a lot of Republicans that complain that like when they post like pseudoscience or pseudo history stuff online, and then these social websites, block their stuff, they're getting their free speech is being violated. It's not at all. Like you have a right to speak, but you don't have a right to my platform, because like it's my server,
so
right? It's Twitter server, so it's not a violation of free speech by
yeah, but
any.
let me expound on why. Let me just talk about why that they believe that. Okay, number one, you're correct. A private company has the right to do what they want,
Sure.
but this is the de facto public square of modern time, 2022, and so yes, they were being censored, and yes, it was the right of the company. That doesn't mean it's good. And that's why Elon came in, purchased the company, and he's going to open it and allow an even forum for discourse. So you're
Sure.
correct and you're wrong at the same time. You're correct because you're right. It's a private company; they can do what they want. But you're wrong in the fact that it's a principle, right? It's a principle of Western democracy that we allow an open forum for discourse. Because if you don't do that, the result is violence. The way that you solve problems is through discourse, and if you take that away, you're going to end in violence, and that's the way it's always been, and that's why it's important, and it's a principle in our society.
So Twitter censoring hate speech isn't in any way taken away from the principle of freedom of discourse. Just
You
like
left
like
the quotes. You left off the quotes. Hate speech, quote unquote. The problem with them
so, but
was that they were censoring people that actually were real people who had genuine concerns about the vaccine, about
sure. Okay,
etc.
sure. So like, but like, if I were to walk into a church and I have a genuine belief that you should all stop worshiping Jesus and start worshiping Satan, they're not going to let me come in and just say that. They're going to stop me for a good reason, and that's not violating my free speech. That isn't promoting the freedom of discourse. Like that. That's like is their platform. They're allowed to create their own.
You
Like
mean like
I
Christians that believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman, and
yes.
everyone else violates their
Yes,
views?
they,
Yeah,
they're
I
allowed.
understand that.
They're allowed to say that. Yeah, but they're not allowed to push that view on anyone else, nor they're allowed to
So you're telling me that the
hostage
view.
of someone else's platform
So
and force people to listen to it.
this is what's interesting, right?
Mhm.
So some of the most dogmatic and hateful people in this world right now are people on the left that believe that what they have is truth. And my argument today is that it's not truth, it's belief, and it's an idea, and it's no different than the Christian truth, and it's no different than the Catholic truth. In fact, and I'm not even religious, I'm a secular humanist. Okay, I understand the fact that um, there's people who have beliefs on both sides. The difference here and the problem is that the left thinks they have science on their side when they don't, because gender fluidity is
Could we get to
not
that?
grounded in objective science or empirical evidence.
Here's the thing: it is.
Explain to me how.
Sure. So first, you said that I noticed when you started describing what a male is, you quoted the Oxford Dictionary. Like, that's not a biological dictionary. So if you want to look up a biological term, you should consult like a biological dictionary. Just like if you were looking up like a physics definition, you should consult like a physics dictionary, because they'll give you two different things. Like, for instance, let's say if you were you want to look up what a field was, right? And I'm talking about, you want to look up what a quantum field is. You'll get a very different definition in an Oxford Dictionary that you would get in a physics dictionary. Do you see what I'm saying?
I quoted both definitions. Not only do I know but hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay,
I
so what's
quoted
the
definition. Hold up.
Okay.
Let me tell you.
Sure.
I quoted two definitions. I quoted the Oxford Dictionary, and I quoted the definition of gender fluidity, which is what transgenderism falls under.
But
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were
using the
both from the
source for
Oxford
just
Dictionary.
men.
No, negative. This one was just me looking up gender fluidity as a conceptual framework. I don't know where it came from. I can show you the source later on, but it's just the definition of gender fluidity. And then I was curious to see if they've updated the definitions in the dictionary. So I looked up Oxford Dictionary, and they haven't. But the point I'm trying to make is that, like, you have to understand, when you're testifying in front of Congress, there's no consensus on this, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a large swath of the United States, including transgender people, that understand women and men to be different based off of.
Let me ask this out of curiosity.
Yeah.
If the Oxford English Dictionary were to include a secondary or even tertiary definition that included transgender individuals either pre-transition, during transition, or post-transition, would you accept that as an acceptable definition of the word man and or woman?
No, because the biology. So here's the thing. Let me break down reality, because a lot of people have never thought through this, and it's required. And I study this in phenomenology, but it's required to really understand the distinction here. So there's two realms that we can live in, right? There's the realm of the conceptual and idea, and there's the realm of the empirical and objective. Now, when I talk about an objective empirical truth, I mean an observable, testifiable, repeatable, objective reality.
I got that for you.
And so the difference is, what's up?
I was gonna say, like, I can talk about we can talk about like observable, demonstrable, measurable phenomena for transgender people. Like,
and that's what I'm saying. But to your point, though, like to his point, he was trying to say.
I'm sorry, I cut him off. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, I'm trying to. The problem is a lot of these answers are too long, but the definition I looked up, just so you know, was man.
I'm aware. Yeah. No, I remember you quoting. The reason I asked that is because it seems like you're almost having an issue with the semantical point here. And I think to kind of focus back on the topic itself is, I mean, would you only prefer us or anyone using the term trans male or trans female?
No, it's not a semantic issue. That's the problem. This is not subjective. This is not a subjective or semantic issue. This is
so. I mean, words in and of themselves are subjective. It's subjective to how we use them.
They're not, and that's why I was trying to.
So
I mean, I can
explain
literally
exactly
prove that to you
just
by giving you a word.
No, hold up. We have to understand this distinction. If you haven't studied Hume and you haven't studied the rationalist versus the empiricist, and you think that words are subjective, you're out of touch with reality.
So you think words have intrinsic meaning?
Words are mapped. So here's the problem. So also, if you haven't studied Kant,
Okay, but
Kant's
no,
a
but
Yeah,
big
but
one.
I think both
okay,
of
but
us
it
have.
sounds
The
like you're
problem is,
prescriptivist.
yeah, you're
So hold on, hold
prescribing definitions to words,
No,
whereas words are tools in which humans use to
No.
communicate.
no, it's deeper than that, and
So
I can explain
words
it,
have
but
an
you have to give me
intrinsic
time.
value.
Words represent empirical reality.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes,
Sure,
let
it
me
represents.
pause you. Look,
Okay.
you guys gotta have to listen to this because it's more complicated than that, right?
Okay.
Okay, I have a whole framework for
Hey,
this,
but,
and I
but
can
hey,
break it out.
but instead of you explaining the whole view, can you just answer like, are you a prescriptivist? Like, do you believe words have intrinsic meaning? Is that that's
Yeah,
what
they
it sounds
do,
like?
but we'd have
Okay.
to dig
So,
down about three layers deep for me to explain that
but
because let me
sure.
give you an example. I'll give you a
Okay,
concrete example right now.
but I was just gonna say, me and Fasad, we're really big into philosophy. We both know what a prescriptivist is,
Okay, and
right?
I study philosophy too. So let me
But
explain. Let me give you an example.
okay.
It's really quick. Okay, dragons can fly. Is that true?
I
And
guess that
the common usage of the way that you're using it, sure, but you
Right.
could
And let me
change,
explain why.
the meaning of that sentence.
But we need to
If
understand the different. We have
that's
to
what
understand the relationships
I would say.
between
No,
these two
that's
things.
not true.
Okay. Let me. So I've thought about this deep enough to where I've drilled down to the truth. Okay. So let me just hear me out for a second. There are concepts that are true within the conceptual framework that exists within concepts and ideas. And then there's empirical truths that have to map to reality. So in the sentence, dragons can fly, that's conceptually true because it's true within the context of the conceptual framework that you've derived it from. But when it comes to empirical truths, it's not true. Dragons cannot fly because they don't exist in reality and we can't observe them and see them. So similarly, some birds can fly is an empirically true statement. So men can have babies is not an empirically true statement. And that's objectively true, and you can't argue against that. And if you do, you're going to fall back on religion and not truth.
I would say
so,
that's an incorrect statement, and I can
so
explain why.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
So when you say dragons cannot fly or can fly, and you
Can
say
fly,
that,
yes.
yeah, right, correct. When you say dragons can fly, and you say that's not true, so there's
No,
one
I
thing
didn't say
think-
that. I didn't
no,
say that.
You,
I said that's
you-
true
you-
within the conceptual framework.
Okay, but that's the point. In order to have a good discussion, we must talk about the locus of information in which we are going to discuss. If you're familiar with Hume, you're familiar he coined that term. So when you're talking about something, we're talking about reality or a conception or an idea. So we're not talking about something that is happening solely inside someone's head. We're talking about something that is a physical change that happens to people.
So
And
how do
there
you
are
get things
studies
in your
that-
head?
Well,
How do you
I can,
get thoughts and ideas in your head?
well, I mean, so there's nature and nurture, but I mean, there's also, the
It's called
whole
impressions.
well, sure, that's part of it, but I mean, the long and the short of that is that there are physical changes to the mind of individuals who identify as transgender, and they can be
And those are
observed.
biological.
Correct,
I
and
agree.
they're physical. They are observable via brain scans. So my point is, there is a physical, observable, testable presence of a brain that explains or identifies as transgender. It has been demonstrated in studies up to 93% accuracy. So there is a physical, observable difference in a brain of a female, biologically born female, who identifies as a male, and a female who identifies as a female, cisgendered. And there is a physical, observable difference between those two things. So, when we're talking about a locus of reality, is it just a feeling that this individual is having? No. Is it something that is observable and testable and even provable by an individual that doesn't know anything about this other person, assuming they can read brain scans? Yes. And we have evidence of that. We have clear evidence of this happening in whatever reality you want to call it, the reality that we share as humans. So when we're looking at this locus of can dragons fly, in the sense of mythology, sure they can. In the sense of, do dragons exist? Of course not. But when we're talking about Harry Potter, he's a wizard. So when we're talking about transgender people living in the society in which we also live, we're talking about the brains in which these people are and the thoughts that they have, which are their ideals, but you can physically see in that brain with brain scans the differences between people who identify as transgender and the people who identify as cisgender. And so when you say there's no difference, or when you say it's an ideal or conception, you're just fundamentally wrong.
No, I didn't say that. I said that. So maybe I was misunderstood a little bit. So
But it's
I
like
agree.
you
I
compare it
agree.
to schizophrenia.
Yeah,
Like
because I
you say,
agree.
like the trans view, like the transgender's view of themselves does
Yeah.
not
So let
map
me.
to the
Yeah.
empirical
So
world.
guess what?
So,
So guess what? Schizophrenia people also show up different in brain scans, right? So my point is that
sure. Okay.
so yeah. So you understand that point. So trust me, I've thought this out a lot. So
Yeah, but I still
um,
disagree with you. I want to go
you
back to
can
that.
disagree with it, but the point is that either there's only two sets of chromosomes you can have.
That's incorrect as
Okay.
well.
So
Here's
I'm guessing you're referencing intersex, which is a very tiny population of the population,
You
a
said
very
there's only
tiny
two.
segment.
Which reality are we living in? Which one numbers you can count or numbers that you can assume?
No, I'm saying that there's
There's
technically
more than two because you
speaking.
just said there was a small percentage of people that didn't meet either one of those.
Yeah, I agree with
Right.
that.
So there's more than two.
No, so we're just misunderstanding each other here.
Well, you said there was
So
two, and then you said there was a third one that we didn't count because it's a small percentage. So that's more than two, right?
no, I'm talking about. So let me give you an example of why what you're saying is incorrect. In biology, they teach you that you have 10 fingers and 10 toes, right? But there's tons of people that don't have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Some of
I
them are
agree.
born with, okay, that's called an abnormality. So I'm talking about the rule, not the exception. If you want to talk about the exception and you want to talk about abnormalities and you want to talk about the tiny percentage of people, we're not talking about that. We're talking about mass produced education, mass produced media, mass produced, we're talking about testimonies in front of Congress.
But
We're
my,
not
my
talking about
problem with that is when you
abnormalities.
have 1% of people that fall in that abnormality, do you know how many people that adds up to?
So let
Do
me
those
tell you,
people
no, no,
just
no,
not
no,
get
no.
rights?
Tell me this: if are you going to teach as a biologist that human beings have 7 fingers when every single other human being in the entire country have 10?
What I
no,
would
but you
say
can
is that
still
it's
teach.
possible for people to have 7 fingers and still have the
Sure,
same rights as 10.
and I'm in agreement with that. But there's a difference because we have to understand the empirical effects of biology. Now, if you deny those, then you're robbing women of the equal opportunity for competition. You're getting women impregnated in prison. You're talking about men that can
Okay,
have babies and
okay,
abortions.
whoa. So
So you're way off. Like
we're jumping like far ahead. So because you're jumping ahead to like
no, I'm trying to give
women
you
getting
examples of why it
raped by
matters.
men in prison and stuff like that. So no. So
Sure, but they're not getting impregnated because that's not a biological fact. And the
okay,
fact is that you're denying biological facts, and that's the problem.
it's not denying a biological fact. So when I
You
say
are.
Let the
no,
bald man
He's
okay,
talk.
saying
no,
that
All
no,
you
three of
can.
okay,
us are bald, or two
no,
of us are
hold
bald.
on. So when I say that a trans woman is a woman, like what do you think I'm saying? What am I saying about
You're
her?
saying that a man has the belief in their head they're a woman, but they do not have the anatomy or the chromosomes.
So
So the empirical reality doesn't match up with
what
their
does the
belief.
anatomy and chromosomes have to do with anything? Because like, that's not how they
Are
determine
you
sex.
serious right now?
And yeah, that has nothing. That's not how they determine sex in
The
biology.
anatomy and
It
chromosomes.
is yes, you are objectively wrong. They do not look at the anatomy or the chromosomes to determine
When
sex
they
in
pull a
biology.
baby up,
Okay, so that's what a doctor do. He look up and he'll see a penis. He say you're a male. He see a vagina. He'll see a woman. But that's not how we do it in biology. We look at the gametes. If you have a bunch of really small gametes, you're a male. If you have a few large gametes, we call them egg. You're a female. That's the way they do that. But here's the thing: when I talk about a transgender woman, I am not talking about her biological sex. I am talking about the gender. That's why I'm not using the term transsexual woman. I'm using transgender. It's totally different. We're
so
talking
how
about
can you
how you
separate
identify.
gender from their empirical attributes?
It's not being separated from their
Why
empirical
would they
attributes.
even
But here's the
be
thing,
trans?
because
Why?
what
Why would
it,
they be trans?
it's not separating the
Give me an example of why they would be trans.
a trans person.
Because trans means they don't
no,
agree with their genitalia and their biology.
No,
the
that's gender
genitalia has
dysphoria.
yes, and the
That's
Exactly.
genitalia.
No, I agree with you.
So, and the genitalia has nothing to do with it. It's about the gamete.
Then why are they getting mutilated
Because, and here's the thing,
surgeries?
you keep
They don't care, but they're willing to get mutilated.
You're confusing sex with gender.
I'm not.
No,
I agree.
Yes, you are because no, here's you are because when I'm here talking about gender, you over here want to talk about penises and vaginas.
Yeah, because those matter.
No,
to a lot of people.
Not with
they
gender.
do matter.
Is wearing a skirt is it a job of a man or a woman?
That's a social construct. I'm not talking about social constructs. I'm talking
so
about
is having
biological
is having breast a thing for a man or a woman?
Biological breasts?
Yeah. Yep. Having
that's
breast.
That's an empirical characteristic of a woman.
No, it's not, because men also have breast and mammary glands, but they also. What about mastectomies? Does that remove the fact that that's a woman?
So this is why this conversation is so crazy, because you guys, it's like, and even if I had kids, right? Like, there's a difference between men and women, biological male and female.
You keep talking about biology.
No one's saying there's not.
No, nobody's saying any of that. That's what I'm saying, because you're talking about
sex. So I'm
trying to describe gender.
Explain to me how gender is detached from biological sex.
Sure,
because first of all, I told you that the Oxford definition in every.
Yes, I can tell you. Yep. Gender is about identity. Sex
no, so that's personal identity. That's completely different than gender.
No.
So let me
part of your identity.
Gender
identity. How you identify.
So let me tell you something. By the definition of the people who created gender fluidity, gender is detached from biological sex. It's an individual identity.
I think so. First of all, when you like these people, like the left, you're speaking to them as if the academics don't even necessarily agree on that.
They do. There's a definition. You can find it.
You just said earlier that they don't agree on this transgender.
No, I said
how people are being censored. Now you're saying they
misunderstood me. You misunderstood. Okay. The consensus so let me give you an example. You can go to biologists. You can go to psychologists. You can go to just normal Americans. There's a disagreement on this topic.
No one's saying there's not, but the problem is you're getting different levels of education and perspective. So if you go to the average person who doesn't know what the word gamete means, it's really hard for them to speak on the biological differences between male and female.
So it used to be chromosomes. Now it's this mystical.
It has never been chromosomes. It's always been the.
It's
gamete.
Funny because actual biologists will reference chromosomes. I've literally heard it.
If you ask an actual biologist, how do you distinguish a male from the female? They're going to point you to the gametes. Because
they're not going to point to chromosomes, XYXX. That's crazy.
It's going to be the gametes.
I literally watched videos today about it.
Well, so what's the XXY? If you have an XXY chromosome, what are you?
The only possible other option is intersex, which is noted in the biology in the literature.
And it's like 3 or 4 different dozen versions.
1.7%.
So that's what I'm asking. So
that's an abnormality. Just like having 4 fingers or 2 heads.
Okay, so what do you do?
Matter. They still have rights.
I'm not denying their rights.
Hold on. Let's put rights.
That's the thing you're missing every time.
Let's put rights to the side for a second. So like, what's the person? What's a person with XXY? What is their gender?
So, what's a human with 9 fingers? They're still human. I'm still going to give them rights. I don't give a shit about that.
Put rights to the side for a second. I'm asking you, so person, you said there's only 2 possibilities, right? XX and XY, right? And then you immediately contradicted yourself and you said, oh, well, there's also intersex, but just a small percentage, right? Totally irrelevant. Right?
It's not irrelevant because they're all connected.
Well,
and so if I needed to,
you have hundreds. You have hundreds of millions of people that fits into neither of your. It is
interest. It's 1.7%. So
of 8 billion.
8 billion people.
Oh, I was talking about America, which is 300 million.
That's the world. That's the global population.
But let me give you.
So you have roughly 170 million people who are intersex that would fit into neither one of your genders.
And why should their rights trump the rights of biological men and women?
Now
we don't care about rights?
No, I'm not talking about rights.
No, hold up. Pause.
But
both of you take 3 seconds to breathe. Both
Hold
of
on,
you.
I'm not talking about right now. I'm
One,
not even
Stop.
talking
Stop.
about right.
Stop.
two,
All right.
Geo.
3.
Stop.
I was
All
trying
right.
to get the point
I'm
across.
gonna let you finish your point, and then we'll continue on. You can
Okay.
don't try not to interrupt. I know it's a thing, but but we tried to let you go early in the game. Now
Okay,
we're trying to
sorry.
respond to it. So let's let
Okay.
him go for it, and if it doesn't work, then let's continue.
Okay.
Hey, what's
so,
up, Joseph Jackson? By the way, hello. Good timing on the comment. We'll take that as a good breather break. All right, continue,
Cool.
Gio.
All right. So I am not talking about race. I'm talking about biological sex. Right. So when you look at the chromosomes, what is an XXY? Please do not divert the conversation about what's a person with 7 fingers, because it's totally irrelevant. 7 fingers has nothing to do with your humanity. We're talking about classification. How would you define them? And with XXY.
So none of this has to do with people's humanity. I'm respecting everyone's
I know
humanity.
I know, and I said from the jump that I'm not
yeah.
talking about that. We're not talking
Okay.
about rights for now. I'm just trying to.
So
trying
there
to
are
get,
so the point I'm trying to so there are abnormalities in biology. Everyone would agree with that.
so
So the
I'm
question
not
is, how do
saying
you
they don't
identify
exist.
them? I think that's what we're missing. What do
So
we
how do you,
call them?
so what I'm saying is that this, okay. Look, 95% of the population falls into 2 categories. Okay. Are there abnormalities? Yes. And I'm not
okay,
like
so there's more than 2 categories, right?
yes, but you have to
Okay, cool.
understand
Go ahead.
I was speaking in terms of generalities. I would never look, any of us that are objective would never say there's only 2, you know, um, only 2 biological sexes, because there is intersex. That's a third one, for instance. I know I looked up the statistic. It's 1.7% of the population, and the other is 5%. So
Okay, so here's the thing. So
yeah,
this is why. So this is why, if you really look deep into this,
I've looked deep.
this is why biologists don't use the sex chromosomes to determine sex. They look at the gametes. That actually is binary.
So you're agreeing with me? There is a binary. The gametes are binary.
with,
You just said it.
with the gametes. That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
So
Now,
okay, well that's better for my position.
I mean, I don't see how
Gametes are binary. That's what you said.
the gametes are binary, but there's other ways we can look at that.
Well,
So
I'm not worried about. Look.
No, stop. Hold on. What I was going to say, so because there are some people who don't produce any gametes at all, like you're sterile or something. So like now they're without a gender.
Yeah,
right?
but
Well, I mean,
this conversation is about just the basic human rights of everyday people.
Well,
that's what it's about. And I know you guys I'm not trying to account for every single abnormality in the entire existence of the human species.
I'm not asking you to do that, but so for one, we got kind of off topic because you had made the assertion that sex and gender are identical.
No, I basically said, and I believe this, that when you look at gender and you look at the definitions historically across time, they're synonymous.
So you're wrong. You're wrong. I can give you several cultures.
So let me tell you why. From a mechanical and structural point of view, how can you say that the name that represents the sex is wrong? Man represents adult human.
I don't know. So I don't even understand what you're talking about. So you said you in discussing.
So I'll give you the Oxford
in discussing
Dictionary.
the way cultures describe gender.
No, I'll give you the Oxford Dictionary
perspective. I mean, like what? What do you?
So I'll give you an example. So Oxford Dictionary definition: a man is an adult male human, and adult male humans have tons of characteristics that are associated with them. So I don't understand. Can a man have a baby? No, they can't have a baby.
Hold on. Let's go back. So because you had said that from like in the past, since in the ancients, the world had considered to be 2 genders. That's the way that's the way all cultures thought of it.
I'm saying that most people, including transgender people, associate man with male, and it's also defined.
But you had said just a few seconds ago that all the cultures agreed that there were 2 genders.
I don't know about all cultures. I'm saying that the definition, and for everyone else, most people, like I said, most people in America I would say probably I don't know 40 to 60%.
Okay, so what about this thing about the historical definition of gender? Like, are you just going back on that? Because that's what I
No,
was.
I'm just saying that what I'm so let me give the context because that's what's missing. You had
Can I
a
pause real quick? And it's not to interrupt. I swear I'll let you finish it. You can get your context. I think Gio will pause. If for any reason this call disconnects in the middle of this, we're going to pause the live stream and just jump back on if you guys want to continue. I did tell it to extend the call, but just wanted to give a heads up in case for any reason the Google call dismisses all three of us. So just
Okay.
You can continue now. Sorry.
Cool. So you had said
Gio,
historic.
let him continue his thought, actually.
Okay. All right.
So what I had brought up is like just it's almost like the laws of proportionality, right? Like there's a proportion of the society that understands gender to be synonymous with biological sex. And I was surprised when I looked up the definition in the Oxford Dictionary that it was defined that way. It was a man is an adult male human. Now that's a synonymous relationship with biological sex. And so you have to understand that there are literally
That's just a
empirical.
fallacy. That's just a bandwagon fallacy.
But
I mean, it's not even a bandwagon fallacy.
it's not
saying,
though.
You're
They're
saying
empirical fallacy.
No. You said there is a proportion of the population that
A lot
believes
of
a
them,
thing.
yes.
Therefore, the thing is true.
No.
What
I
kind
didn't
of
say that.
logic is that?
I did not say
me.
that.
Okay,
No,
you said
no,
there's
I'm
a
not saying
proportion
that.
of you said there's a proportion of the population
No,
that believe that
I'm just
gender.
stating a fact. I'm just stating a fact. It doesn't mean it's true. So like,
If it's a fact, then that would necessarily mean
it's
true.
So you can have you can have people that believe something that's not true.
Yeah, but that's a belief, not a fact.
I don't want to get.
Yeah, so that's my point. Is that
so you have a belief?
I'm saying it's a fact that certain people believe this, not that it's a fact. You know
totally
what I'm saying?
okay. But we can agree on that. Like that's
okay. That's what I'm
totally
saying. We're misunderstanding each other. So the point I'm trying to make is that there's a large portion of the population. It doesn't even matter really. Like right, even if one person believed in the truth, then it's the truth. But there are characteristics associated. There are attributes associated with biological sex of male and female that are undeniable.
Well, what does the large portion of the population believing that have to do with anything?
Because you can't go to Congress and testify in front of a freaking congressman and say men can have babies, and then they accuse you of being violent and your speech is tantamount to violence when literally there's such a large portion of the population that believes.
So you're saying I asked you.
Imagine if I went
but here's the thing. I'm asking you just to follow my train of thought. I asked you, what does the point that a bunch of a large portion of the population believe this have to do with anything? And then you said because you can't go to Congress and say things. Like
yeah, because you can't just discount everyone in the nation of what their beliefs are. Because you're coming to the Congress with a belief, not a truth.
So
that's a difference.
Okay, so what do you think their truth is? Because it sounds like you're
the truth is that there's...
No. I'm asking you, what do you think? So
there's a lot of them.
Sure. There. Okay, so back to this thing. You had brought up a large portion of the population believe that gender and sex are the same thing.
I mean, a good portion, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. I'm asking. So
yeah.
what?
So what?
What does that have? Yes.
I mean,
that means what to the like objective.
So first of all,
because you were talking about objective reality.
Yeah, I am.
Because 1,000 years ago, a large portion of the population believed that lightning came from Zeus and the gods and stuff.
That's true.
It means totally nothing. You're appealing to something that makes no sense to appeal to. This is just
because this is a little bit different than lightning.
This is the bandwagon fallacy.
This is it is a fallacy.
No, I'm not making a false generalization, right?
It's not a false generalization. It's a bandwagon fallacy.
Well,
like Todd just said.
It's an appeal to the masses.
Your argument is fallacious. It's not, and it's the masses. They're not even the experts on this. Just because some.
It's so funny that you say that because I can give you like so many examples where it's like, who cares what they think? He has a penis. Who cares if he has a penis and he's in the locker room of the females? He just doesn't get it. It's like no. There's actually empirical evidence for this.
I'm not.
And this is different than lightning from Zeus.
So I'm not sure what it has to do with anything. So here's the thing. and I think I see the problem.
And
So you're
this
prescriptivist.
is sad that we're even
So here's the thing, like you're prescriptivist, right? You think words have intrinsic meaning, and so
no,
you
words
have,
map to reality or they map to conceptual things. That's
yeah,
the
Those are
two
tools
options.
that we use to
here's the
describe
thing.
what's
Like,
happening.
so here's the thing. Yeah, we map the words to reality, and we can map.
Yeah,
them
where do you think you get the words?
we made them
From
up.
reality.
We make them
No,
up.
we did different. We made them up.
No,
I could
false.
literally, I mean, like,
False.
could literally just give you the history of words.
This right
I
here.
can tell you right
Hold
now.
on, stop. Listen, this right here. This is a magazine to a Glock 19, right? So it got
Yeah,
rounded.
physical thing you map to your brain.
Okay, sure. So
This is like basic stuff.
No. We could call this a bloom, right? And as long as we all agree that when I say bloom, I am talking about this, we can have an intelligent conversation about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's called mapping into reality.
That's not prescriptivism. That means it doesn't have an
no,
intrinsic meaning.
It's us using a tool to describe this item. That's it.
So
it doesn't have an intrinsic value in and of itself. We're using it to have a meaningful communication. That's
I need to give like a whole lecture on this because this is like it's hard to like explain this stuff to you because you guys are like a word. There's something called a sign and a signifier, right? So words either map to reality or they don't, and either they're empirical or they're conceptual. That's your two options. Either they're consistent conceptually or they're consistent.
You said that they're either empirical or conceptual. That's not a true dichotomy. So would you say at first you said they either map to reality or they don't? That's a fact. That's a true dichotomy.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say they're either empirical or conceptual?
Exactly.
That is a false dichotomy. No, it's not.
No, it's not. Either a word maps to the empirical reality of the world, or it maps to the conceptual framework that exists within. Those are two options.
No, that's a false dichotomy. If you really want to use disjunctive syllogism, what you really need to do is use a logical negation of it, because in most instances it's going to fail, except in like really rare instances, like if you say odd or even. Those happen to be logical negations of each other, but in a lot of cases it won't. Like when you just said empirical.
So
conceptual, that is not it's a false dichotomy.
Let me ask you, like, let's unbury ourselves from the academic freaking terminology that we've been buried in. Should a trans woman who has a penis be able to go into the locker room and change in front of your neck in front of your daughter?
So
that's a question. That's a legitimate question.
Cool. So I wouldn't want a man with show his penis in front of my son. Like, so I mean,
that's where I'm coming from.
I mean, you brought up this crazy example.
It's not a crazy example. Okay, that's legitimately the example.
The trans thing has literally nothing to do with it. Like whether or not they're trans or not, I don't want an adult showing their penis to my child.
So there's trans women that have penises.
Okay, so the trans has nothing to do with it.
It does. They have penises.
Well, so okay, wait a minute. So are you telling me?
And this is where
if a trans woman shows your kid his penis, that's bad. But if a cis guy does it, it's all good.
They're both bad. They're both bad.
Okay, so then trans has nothing to do with it.
No, I'm just saying.
The scenario in and of itself.
No, what
you're saying is exposing your genitals is wrong. Correct.
But we're letting one in and we're letting the other one out.
No,
that's a difference.
No, it doesn't. Your analogy.
My analogy is literally what's been debated.
It's totally irrelevant to the trans thing. It's like saying, would you be okay with a trans person murdering somebody?
Trans people have.
Well, I don't want anybody to murder anyone.
But trans people have penises.
Not always.
Not all of them.
Some of them.
What about a female transitioning to male? She doesn't have a penis at all. She's never had one. She's trying to transition to male. Would you be okay with her transitioning to him, going into a male locker room and exposing her vagina?
Did she get the surgery to like transition?
She doesn't have a penis yet.
Why does that matter? We're talking
about
an adult.
You see what I'm saying? Like you're like have to get this like really specific niche view because it's like
not a niche view.
It is because what you're saying is exposing your genitals is wrong. We agree with that.
No. People going to prison and getting pregnant is not a niche view.
We also disagree with people going to prison and getting raped. Like we don't have any problem with either of those statements.
So you would rather someone go to prison and get impregnated, or you would rather?
No, I
No,
would
I
not
don't
like a
want
person
somebody
to go to
getting
prison and get
prison.
impregnated. That is end of statement. That has nothing to
Totally
do with
irrelevant.
my stance
So
on
why not?
transgender.
Why not? Why not like exclude those people?
I mean, I'm
We
not
need to
opposed to
exclude
people that
everything.
are rapists being excluded from the public or other people.
I'm just saying, like,
I have no
it's one of
problem
those
with
things.
that.
It's like we pretend like there's no biological consequences, but then we see them. We see the
Okay.
sports
Hey,
team that's robbed of their equity. We see the
No,
people in prison that are
what
hey,
you see more
impregnated.
often
here's the
is
thing.
is go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, because you keep bringing up these scenarios that has nothing to do with trans.
No,
Okay,
they have everything to do with trans. They're extremely
okay.
related.
That scenario earlier when you talking about a person showing their genitalia to a kid. Under what circumstances
No,
would it
not a
be okay?
child. I'm saying in a locker room,
In
it's
any
possible.
situation.
In any
Okay,
circumstances, like when is that okay?
let me
But
make
why
the
does the trans
statement.
thing matter?
Let me make the statement. If I have a locker room full of women, biological, and I just open it up to trans men, I'm sorry, trans women, sorry, and they can go in there and they can undress and they have penises, and women worry about that, and it's not just me. You have to understand, like, there's tons of women that worry about this, and so it's like, are we going to discount the women, the
No,
biological
we're not gonna
women's
discount.
opinion?
I have a perfect answer there. I have a perfect answer to this.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
so for a locker room. So locker rooms in gyms or whatever, right? They're private, right? You can have a bet. The business owns that locker room. They can decide who they want and who they don't want in the bathroom. They can um, um, set the criteria and that's necessary for going into the bathroom, and then they could tell people who they could tell people if you're not comfortable with these rules, don't go into our bathroom. Problem solved.
Yeah,
Like
problem solved by excluding other people who have different
nobody's
beliefs.
being excluded. Like you get to
Yeah, the
exclude
people who don't
yourself.
want to go in
Like
there with the penis.
it is if we're in a
Like,
scenario
come
where it's
on now.
my locker room, I get to make the rules, and I say if you don't like the rules, you don't have to go
Yep,
into my
you're the
locker room.
government. Hey, if you don't like
It's
people's
not the
penises in your
government. We're
face,
talking.
These
I
are
was
then
we're
don't
these are
come
talking
talking
about
here.
it.
private
No, we're talking about
facilities.
a private facility.
Sure. So a private facility is different than public schools that are funded by the government.
So in a public school is okay. Would you be okay in a public school with a
That's the
guy?
point I'm trying to make.
Would you be in a public school with a guy showing his penis to another kid?
No, especially if they're allowed
Okay,
into the
then
locker
trans
room.
thing is totally irrelevant.
No, it's not
There's no reason
irrelevant.
to talk about that.
Oh, it's irrelevant that we would allow trans women into women's
Okay.
lockers?
Okay. What I'm
What are
okay.
you talking about?
We no.
That's
Hey,
completely different.
because your analogy has nothing
No,
to do with trans issues.
my analogy is rooted in reality. We are
You
allowing trans women into the locker rooms of men.
you
How is that not connected in any way? Like,
we,
you're the one that's out of touch with reality.
I think what's happening is well, and I could be completely
Like,
wrong here.
what's
It's
going
kind
on
of
right
we're
here?
talking around each other here. I
I'm
think
not
the
talking
bigger
around.
point.
We're
Can
not
I
talking.
speak
We're
on this
talking
one real
about
quick?
trans. Yeah.
Let me just get this out, and I could be wrong because I think it could clarify. I think what's happening is you have a problem with the potential of genitals being exposed to other people in a locker. So do we. And
Yeah,
if you're
and
just
pregnancy.
randomly flaunting your genitals, no matter what they are, in
'Cause that's
another
what they do
person's
in locker
face,
rooms.
you're
They get
invading their
undressed.
privacy, you're invading their comfort level, and
Yes.
you're making them uncomfortable. I don't disagree
Yes.
with any of that. What I disagree with is when you say there's a private facility that has to do this or can't do that. Now we're, if you're trying to be inclusive, what you're doing is kind of going in reverse there.
No, I'm trying
Neither
to
of us
protect.
disagree with exposing genitals to other people in a situation in which
Yeah,
doesn't
but
call
how
for
do
it or
you
is
how do you
unwarranted
not
or makes another person uncomfortable is
how
a
do you
good thing.
not? And this is what's crazy to me. How do you not allow someone to present their genitals when they're in the same locker room? They're all getting
we just
naked.
said that we agree with. Did you not just hear him? He just said like we both agree that you should not go into a locker room flaunting your genitals. Like, I
Doesn't
don't
matter
care-
what the locker room setup is, by the way.
Yes, yeah. I don't care if you're a cisgender woman or cisgender male or transgender woman or transgender male. That's what I was saying. The trans thing is
How do
totally
they
irrelevant
shower?
to whether or not somebody's flaunting their genitals.
How do they shower? Just shower with a towel on now?
What do you mean? So in the shower, the thing is closed off. Nobody should be looking at
No, that's
anybody.
not true. I went to showers with 20 men, 50 men when I was in the Marine Corps.
Does that make you comfortable?
Well, I mean, I did that in the Army, and so here's the thing: they could just change that.
But
So-
who cares if it's all just a gender? If it's all just a social construct,
does
who
it
cares?
make you
But
uncomfortable?
The gender is totally irrelevant. So like what I'm saying is people
It's
should
not irrelevant. It's actually very irrelevant. It's very relevant, unfortunately.
okay, can I ask you a question? Should people go around flaunting their genitals?
It has nothing to do with the conversation. It's
Then
about
why- then why
It is
bring
your
up the
analogy. It is
It's
your
your
analogy.
analogy.
All
No,
I did was
no,
remove
no,
the
no.
trans part.
It's
I'm
about
asking-
acceptable spaces. It has nothing to do with
so it's
acceptance of
acceptable for
flaunting.
men to flaunt their genitals to other men, but
Correct,
not
it
for
is.
trans women
And-
to do it.
Correct, because
Okay.
we have differences
so-
in biological sex.
So
There's
just to be clear, you're
You
agreeing
don't want to
that
admit
men
the
can flaunt their
differences, and that's the
genitals to
problem.
other men in locker rooms as long as they're biologically
Yes,
born
because
males.
they're all men.
Okay.
It's not.
Cool.
It's not even flaunting. It's just the nature. It's the nature of us showering together.
So me being in my own shower, minding my own business, not trying to view your genitals, not trying to, and you approach me and gather my attention to display your genitals. There's nothing wrong with that, or vice versa. If I were doing it to you, you say that's fine because it's all men. It's all in the locker room.
I would say that there's a gradient, and that's more acceptable than having someone.
It's
Who's a
more
female.
acceptable for me to flaunt my genitalia to other biological men than it is
Correct.
for
Yes,
a
because you all have-
transgender person
you all share
to
the
enter in a
same
bathroom and shower.
genitalia.
I'm
You all
cool
share
with
the same
that
thing.
answer.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, to me,
That
that's like,
is
come on, like we
strange.
have daughters. Like, do you have daughters? Do you have like you think that a daughter should just be?
I think you're appealing to emotion and trying to
No, I'm
win a
not.
point
I'm
on
appealing to
exposing genitals to other
practicality.
people.
I was also so here's the thing. Like
It's a practicality, pragmatism,
Like,
utilitarian.
here's the thing. I do
Yeah.
have an issue. Like, I do have a daughter, and if someone exposed their genitalia, if an adult exposed their genitalia to my daughter, I'm gonna be like, whoa, was it a trans person? No. Oh, okay.
Well, I don't care about that either.
Well,
It's just
that's
the
what I'm
fact that
saying.
it
It's totally
happens.
irrelevant because
But the difference is
it's
that
just like
someone's
when I used
accepted.
another analogy, just like yours, when we talk about a transgender murdering someone. The trans part has nothing to do with it.
No,
We don't want people murdering people. We don't want people flaunting their genitals.
No,
to
but
other
some
people.
people are accepted into the environment and some people aren't. Like, men are not accepted into women's bathrooms.
But
Transgender people are. That's the difference. Why don't you understand that? That is
Okay,
the difference.
I'm
One
not
person's
talking about
not
people
and
being
one person
accepted. I'm
is.
talking about acceptable behavior. It is not.
I don't care about
acceptable
acceptable behavior.
I mean, that kind of sums up the whole conversation, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't,
That's what we're
because
talking about.
like acceptable behavior is an issue. But I'm saying that someone has access to a group of people and someone doesn't. We all have
Okay,
agreed
but
that
if
men
this
can't have
person is
access.
abusing that access, they should definitely be removed. It doesn't
100%.
matter how they gained access to it. And by the way, if there is a truly legitimate trans person that is going in the locker and flaunting their genitalia to other people, they
It's
should
not
be
they're
removed
flaunting
for
it.
such a
It's
behavior.
just the nature
And
of
it
their
wouldn't
body.
matter if that was a biological male doing that in a biological men's locker room that was specific for biological men. It is the behavior, not the access, that's the issue.
There's a large portion of the population that doesn't want someone with a penis in the locker room with all the females.
Okay, hold on. Let's switch gears to that large.
Regardless of who those.
Okay, you said there's a large portion of the population that doesn't want something.
Yes,
All right.
including
So a long time.
transgender and gay people.
So not too long ago, there was a large portion of the population that didn't want integration. They didn't want black people in the locker room with them. Was that okay?
No.
It's not
Okay,
about comfort.
so here's the thing.
That
Whether
doesn't
or
mean
not
it maps to what we're talking about.
whether or not a large portion of the population wants something,
We're talking about something
it's
different.
totally irrelevant to the
Skin
fact
color
whether or
is
not it's
immutable.
right or wrong. So that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. 'Cause
we're
you
talking about different topics here.
No,
The
no,
skin
but
color
no,
is irrelevant.
I'm pointing out the fallacy in your argument. Because like
Not a
here,
fallacy.
it is. You're saying something shouldn't be because a large portion of the population.
How
wants
are
something.
you going to sit there with a daughter and tell me that a man with a penis can go into the freaking locker room of your daughter, and that's not a problem?
You said a man with a penis. Like, is he exposing his penis?
It's a locker room. You literally get dressed.
Okay, but it doesn't mean that. Like, I mean,
No, it does mean that. That's literally what a locker room means.
No, you could
go
go-
into the locker room and you take a shower
I
and
go
you
in
get
the
dressed.
locker. I go in the locker
don't-
room to fill up my water bottle sometimes.
I go in the locker room like every day. I don't expose my penis.
That's
to
not the
it.
argument we're
but
talking about.
Okay, here's the thing. If you're talking about exposing genitalia, now you're saying walk into the locker
Yeah,
room.
because
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because if someone is exposing their genitalia, we need to correct that. And whether someone is trans is totally irrelevant.
so should we
I don't
start
see why that
drafting
matters.
trans women and trans men? No, trans men. Should we start drafting trans men since we don't give a shit about objective reality?
What we
We
could
might
do
as
is,
well.
what we could do is tell people not to flaunt their genitalia in the bathroom or in the locker room.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I
one
think
issue.
Bajan
that's-
Brand makes a
that-
good point. How did
the point
flaunting
is that they
genitalia
have
come
it.
about? I think that we've
Because
dwelled
that's
on
an
the
objective.
specific
Because we're
information.
talking. No. This is extremely important because you guys want to detach empirical reality from the name gender.
So here's
Okay.
the thing. Here's the thing. No. I don't want to do that. So for me, gender is a biological construct, but it's not tied to the gametes nor to the chromosomes. Gender is about identity. How do you identify? Well, it's in your brain. So they
you
can
might as well be Jeff.
No.
You might as well be
Stop. Hold on. There's not a brain scan that can make that you can look at and say, oh, this is a Jeff. That's not how that works.
No, that's just whatever you care about.
It's not.
It's not a
I mean,
feeling.
you wanted
Whatever
you wanted facts that were objective, measurable, and demonstrable.
Yeah.
I'm giving them to you
It's
right now.
called-
There is a scientific study. They used machine learning, and we had men and women of very similar intellectual and aptitude capabilities, have them perform a task, and their performance was almost identical, but their brains did very different things to solve the problems. So what this machine was able to do was look at the differences and actually determine the difference between a male brain and a female brain. Right. And so there are instances when that male and female brain does not map to their body. That brain is what you know. Hold on. This is science here, because you were talking about empirical. You were talking about empirical objective
We're both
reality.
agreeing now. We're talking about
your identity is in your brain. Your identity is in your brain. That is how you identify.
Yeah, but you can identify as female and still not have the biological characteristics.
That's what makes you trans. That's why you're a trans woman, because your brain does not correspond. No, that's make you a trans woman.
No, trans woman.
Yes, you're a biological. You can say it's the biological male, right? And your gender is that is the definition of trans. They're saying their identity.
I agree, because the trans community believes in two identities, male and female, either trans male or trans female. That's all the two they have. That's the reason why they have that.
Wait, no, hold on. Can you address my point? What I was saying about the
study?
There
ain't no trans freaking gamete.
Let me take on some.
Can you address the point that I was?
Let's both pause real quick. Let's address some comments. So, why isn't it appropriate to be nude in the locker? I'll take that one because I've been semi-moderating. The answer is I don't think either side would say that it's inappropriate to be nude in the locker. I would say when you start flaunting your genitalia to other people in the locker, you're displaying inappropriate behavior that both of us would not condone. Second being, I would report any man to show me their genitalia. I would agree. I think that's a good call. Probably don't flaunt your genitalia in the locker room. There's a difference in getting changed in the locker room and flaunting your genitalia.
Yes.
That's the long and the short of that. Now, the third point of contention I'd like to bring up is I know for time's sake and for respect's sake that at least typically Gio does have to wrap up soon.
You can go.
So if are we good to continue on both sides, or do we need to pause for now?
I'm good.
I'm good here.
Okay. So let's continue, and I will say let's maybe try to a singular, well-defined question and then response, and then reverse that.
Or I would like the study that I brought up. I was talking because he had brought up objective reality, had mentioned it several times, and what I was saying was that a person can walk into this office, right? They can examine their body and then do a brain scan, and the doctors can actually determine whether or not you're trans, and that trans person does not have to communicate any information about them. They're just using indicators from that brain scan. How is that not objective reality? But the indicators are demonstrable, they're measurable, they're observable with 93% accuracy with machine learning. How is that not exactly what you were talking about?
So I would probably answer you by this. Mapping gender to biology produces empirical results. So
okay, hold on. Like I just mapped it to biology. I was talking about the brain. The brain is biological, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I did.
Yeah, but a biological male he's going to have an extreme advantage. Can I kind of
So
explain to you why there's a problem here?
Are you saying a brain is not as biological as a penis? Is that your argument?
A penis is a manifestation of a series of chromosomes, which also has associated attributes to it.
So is a brain.
Yeah, brains have
the
lots
entire
of things.
body. Okay, so
yeah, you know what you can do? You can also scan a brain and see that someone's illogical. Someone has a dysmorphic opinion of themselves, dysphoria. You can also map a brain and see that it's sociopathic. You can also map a brain and see that they. Oh, so what's your point? So you can map a brain and explain anything.
Well, that's
not the point I'm trying to make.
What did you mean? What's my point? You asked what's my point. You said a bunch of things.
Yeah, because you can map a brain. You can scan a brain.
You made a statement.
Literally anything. You can see.
That was just a total straw man. Like you said, you asked me.
Straw man. It's not a straw man.
What's my point about what?
I literally was just.
You said that you can map somebody's brain to determine if they have an opinion about stuff that doesn't map reality, right?
If they're schizophrenic, you can map it if they're sociopathic. You can map it if they're a serial killer, if they have damage in their frontal lobe. Sure. That doesn't necessarily necessitate the fact that we should believe that men are women.
No, listen to what do you mean? So we're talking about how they identify. You can't be
their
wrong
belief in
about
their head. You doesn't map to their chromosome
that's
or their biology.
So
that's what.
What do you mean? It's not biology. It's the scan. The scan is looking at biology. The brain is biology.
I think maybe if you were to review the actual study, you might understand it, and I'll try taking it from a different angle because I've read the study, and I'll just use different words, and maybe it'll help. Maybe
you can give me the study, and I will agree with you that someone believes they're a man or a male.
It's not about a belief.
Pause. Let me handle it. So it's not about a belief system. It's not about what a person is just thinking. It's how their brain forms, and it's how it forms pathways. And so if you want to use the term binary, the way a female brain operates to get from point A to point B when solving puzzles, completing tasks, performing essays, etc., it maps out in a certain pathway. The male brain does it in a different pathway. Now, you can take a large sample of people and you can put them in this study and get them to perform these basic activities. And you'll notice that you have male brains performing this in the same pathway. They're going from point A to point B in a very linear fashion. And then they have females going in a circular fashion. They go about a different way. Whatever.
And what I'm saying is
let me finish real quick, and then I'll swear I'll let you talk. Okay. Is that when you scan someone who is identifying as female, in 93% of those cases, their brain is functioning like the female brain in those tasks, performing those exact same tasks. They're doing it in a different pattern than the typical, and 93% of the cases, male brain does. And the same is said for the other way around. In a case in which a female is transitioning or identifies as a male, her brain acts and perceives these tasks in a more similar fashion, 93% of the time, as a male brain. So what you're saying, and what the study is pointing out, is that a brain, a very biological point of you, and literally what makes you, your identity, in cases of transgender individuals, correctly identifies them in the category in which they perceive themselves. So if I were to say I identify as a female, I could have a brain scan done, and if my brain performed these tasks the same as other female brains,
but they can't have children.
That's not relevant. That my mother can't have children. She doesn't have a uterus.
So no. Okay, so females can have children.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but females in general can have children. Like, you can point to every exception to the rule of the book. That's not going to change the truch of reality.
What I'm saying is
you keep bringing up reality like this study isn't done in reality. In what dimension?
What world did we bring this in?
Okay, you know what we need to do? We need to bring in some primatologists who've studied Homo sapiens and primatology. We're mammals, bro. Like, not only we're mammals.
I mean,
no. Let me finish, because a biology professor would literally put everyone in this conversation in their place. we are mammals. We are Homo sapiens. There's male and female, and to the extent that there's transgender or intersex people, those are abnormalities. Those aren't the rule.
But
So you can point to them and
no
pretend
one's
like those.
denying that either.
What? Yeah. So what? Like, there's
So-
there's an abnormality. There's just the transgender
Right.
just makes up a small portion of society. I
Yeah.
don't see why that's
no
relevant.
one's denying that. The
Okay,
point is
well,
you
then
have
what's the issue?
1.7%, aka about 200 million people that don't fit your binary. Okay,
No,
and
200
they have equal
2
rights as every
point-
other human that does fit in that
I
binary.
didn't. I've never discussed rights. I'm saying that there's a factual basis for biological male and female, and yes, there is a binary, or I'm sorry, there is a transsexual element.
We're
But-
not even talking about the sex part. So like because it is the with these studies, what he just pointed out. Okay, so the female brain does this, right? The
Yeah, I
male
can bring on
brain
plenty of
does
biology
that. No, this is something like I'm just trying to like break down this analogy, right?
Yeah.
Female brain does this. The male brain does that, right? The brain is going to do one of these things regardless of the person's opinion. Okay, so you can look at the brain. You can say, "Oh, if you have a male body and your brain does this, you're trans because you're female identity because your brain it works in a way that you would expect
Yeah,
the
but I'm
female
not
brain to
denying
work." No, okay. Well, it sounds like you were because you were.
No.
Weren't you just saying like that? Like it sounded like you were saying like what you're saying is based in objective reality, and somehow what we're saying is
No. There's objective.
Well, gender is about identity. That's even what pronoun usage it's where we have male and female pronouns. So it's about identity. I don't need this. Okay, when we talk.
Well, if it's about identity, then why is it trans?
What do you
mean? Why
would
you need? If it's about identity, why is it trans?
Because trans is the term.
Because you want to be something else.
No. The trans
man or woman.
Okay.
Is there any trans?
Okay,
other
can you
than
stop
man or
answering
woman?
the questions that you asked me?
Is there any trans other than man or woman? Is there any trans other than? Is there any other trans besides trans man or woman? Where's the other trans?
No, I'm not.
Exactly. That's my point.
I don't know what was your point.
The term trans doesn't
the
identify
point,
necessarily
trans man or trans woman. What's the other option? I'm asking both.
Can we go back to the point you asked me? Because when we talk about pronouns, you said what exactly? What do you mean?
Because I'm asking you, if there's more than two,
I was
then
talking
there has
about,
to be a third.
I
was talking about
that correctly, by the way.
I was talking about pronoun usage, and you said, "What's the point in bringing up trans?" Right? Trans is a term that we use when
transition from one or the other.
No,
male or female.
No, it's not. Stop.
Oh, come on now.
I'm trying to explain it to you because you asked me a question. You asked me a question and didn't let me answer instead of answering it for me. That's the definition of a straw man. It's just another fallacy you committed. Let me correct this. A straw man is not a fallacy. You asked me a question.
I'm not saying that.
You asked me a question and then started answering it for me.
Yeah, because you're assuming there's more than 3 or 4 or 20 genders, but trans people only care about male and female.
I didn't say anything like that. Again, that's another straw man. You asked me a question and then you started answering it for me.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay, so when we talk about pronoun uses, you asked me why bring up the word trans? I mean, trans has nothing to do with what we're talking about with the point I was making with pronoun uses. It's about identity. So when I say who did what, he did it. You're referring to him, right? Who's there? They are there, right? So we're talking about identity. So there's no reason to look in someone's chromosomes for when we're talking about pronouns. It's all about identity. That's what pronouns are used for anyway. And when we talk about gender, it's about identity. You identify things with your brain. It's up here, and that's.
Then who cares about gender? If it's identity, you can just be Rick or Bob. You don't need anything.
So, do you understand that when he did this brain scan, there's not a different operational way that
you're hanging your whole argument on brain scan.
Hold on. You brought up why can't you be Rick or Bob? There is no. There is no neurological difference between someone named Rick or someone named Bob.
No, I'm not saying that. That's my point.
You brought it up. That's total nonsense.
I'm saying that why
there is a neurological difference between male brains and female brains, not between Rick and Bob. So why are you bringing that up?
Yeah, so we agree on that thing. There's a difference between male and female.
You brought up Rick and Bob.
Yeah, because Rick and Bob is what
what
So
if someone
hold on.
has
What
a
does that have to
penis
do with
Hold up.
and their
Rick and
brain
Bob
identifies
is
them
in.
as a female?
So if someone has a, so here's the thing. First of all, let me Rick and Bob. The Rick and Bob thing is because that's how I understand gender fluidity. It's an individual identity. It has nothing to do with
Two
with.
things. We're
So,
not talking gender
with gender
fluidity. We're talking about
fluidity, you're changing the
transgenderism.
subject. Yes.
But
Well,
second
no,
thing being that there
gender.
is
So
there, like,
transgenderism is a product of gender fluidity.
no,
Yeah, it
No, it's
is.
not. No, it's not.
it's a separate
No, so
identifying
It's not.
issue.
I go.
No,
No,
gender
no,
fluid.
hold on, stop.
Gender.
Again, you're already wrong because they
I didn't know.
examine the brains of children as young as they could
You
possibly
can.
examine them, and they're already identifying with genders. They're already
Okay, so you can.
they're already don't working the way a gender would. So you can take a
Okay.
newborn girl and a newborn boy, and their brains are going to operate in different ways.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. But
Okay,
my point is that
okay, so it has nothing to do with fluidity. It's not like
no,
it's switching
no,
energy. It's
no, no,
the
no.
brain always operated the way it
So,
did.
look, so let me define the terms as they define it. I'm not even defining anything. I'm just using their definition. First of all,
Who's there? Just so I know who you're talking about.
I mean the if you just Google gender fluidity and look at the definition.
So Google. Okay, so Google's term.
You're saying gender.
Just
making
Google
sure we're on the
gender
same page.
fluidity. Yeah, I mean it's. I'm assuming they created the definition. I didn't create it.
Right.
But the point I'm trying to
the gender fluidity refers to the change over time in a person's gender expression.
Yeah. So in other
Okay,
words,
so
it's let me hold on. Let me make
that
the
is not
point.
what
I haven't even made my
transgenderism.
point.
Okay. Go ahead.
No. If gender is fluid, then you can be transgender. You can switch from one, and this is what's the whole point of it, a detached gender from biological sex, because it's fluid in their definition. I've literally read the definition. So
okay, so your definition doesn't debunk anything that I said. So when I talked about the children's scans, right? They were scanning children as young as young as they could safely do, and their brains always operated in that function.
I'm very skeptical of
so it's not changing.
I'm very skeptical of children under the age of reason or puberty having any type of logical decision on their behalf.
It has nothing to do with logic. It has nothing to do with their beliefs. What they're doing is they're just scanning the way their brain operates. This is what I was talking about, because you're saying their beliefs are detached from reality.
You're appealing to authority.
No,
you're appealing to a scientific study that debunks what I'm saying.
No. Well, so here's the thing. An appeal to authority is when you appeal to authority that's not actually an authority. If you're citing an expert in the field, it is not an appeal to authority.
I have experts too that discount you.
I'm talking about this specific. You haven't named this expert. So I'm talking about this specific field. So I'm talking about this specific study.
There's literally been many people.
You're just saying you're citing a study. Like
no,
I'm talking about a specific study. So
yeah.
What do you mean? What are you just saying?
Oh, I'm just saying that there's multiple experts that agree with me.
Agree with you on what?
The fact that children under the age of reason and puberty cannot dictate whether or not, in all circumstances.
So you realize that is totally. You realize I had just said that was totally irrelevant to the point that I was about to make. This has nothing to do with the way they're rationalizing things.
Yeah.
They're not thinking through problems. They're just scanning their brains. The children can do nothing. They can take.
Well, then you have the perfect solution. I hope it works.
Hobbs, they can take a toddler and just give them a Rubik's cube and
I just don't believe that you have the perfect solution.
Okay, can we stay on topic? I didn't say I had a perfect solution. I was just educating you on how your definition gender
you can
fluidity.
Scan brains for anything.
Stop. No, hold. Listen. I brought up the fact that transgender people. We're not talking about gender fluidity. You said that gender fluidity. You said that transgenderism is a product of gender fluidity. I am debunking that right now, because when they can scan their brains always identified with that specific function. And now you're just
saying, believe in a gender binary.
Now you're just saying no. Look, can we just stay on what?
I'm trying to understand literally your point. Okay, you're saying that there's no gender fluidity if they scan their brain, it's either male or female. Is that correct?
So here's the thing. So when
I'm confused.
They can scan the male brain, they can scan the female brain, even young kids, right? And both of them will exhibit functions that are very that are indicative of that specific gender.
So two genders.
So it has nothing to do with the belief.
So is it two genders or not?
What do you mean? The two genders are not?
And you've got the proof. You said science can scan the brain and they know
No,
what gender you are.
what I was debunking was your broad assertion that transgenderism is a product of gender fluidity.
No, it's not a
That
product.
is
It's
false.
conceptual. It's a conceptual framework of gender fluidity. So in other words,
No, it is not, because it's not fluid.
it's not. Okay.
The gender
It's not fluid.
fluidity.
So you agree with me? There's two genders.
Gender fluidity refers to change
So it's not
over
fluid.
time. It refers to change over time.
People think that they can change over time.
I'm reading the definition of the
I
word.
know. I've read the definition too.
Okay,
People think they can change over time. So you're saying that's not true.
That is not what's going on
So
with
it's
the transgender
binary.
thing. They always identified with that. So when you say
So
that,
it's binary.
okay, no, when you say that gender, that
I'm getting confused by your explanations.
okay, probably because you keep cutting me off, right? You said that transgenderism is a product of gender fluidity.
Yeah, it only
right?
exists.
No, hold
in
on.
construct.
I don't want you to get confused again. Let me break this down. All right. Gender fluidity refers to change over time in a person's gender expression, right? Now, that is false because they can scan tiny little brains from babies, and they'll always identify with that's one of those two genders. So it wasn't fluid. It did not change over time. It was
So you're
always
conservative. That's a conservative point. That's not a liberal left point.
I don't care about liberal left things. Well,
I'm just telling you. I'm saying like
Cool.
me and you agreed that there's two binary genders associated with biological sex, and
I didn't say that. I didn't say that it was binary. I
said
disagree.
between
No,
one or two.
no. I didn't say it was binary. What you said was that transgender people's gender. No, what you were saying was that transgender's gender expression changed over time, and that is
It does. I've seen it. I literally have friends who.
Wait. That's not how it works with all trans. Because you talk to a lot of trans people, and they say they've always felt that way.
But have you ever heard of
that's exactly
detransitioners?
That's exactly what the
three
science.
genders.
That's exactly what the science back up, that it wasn't changing over time, that they always identified with that.
Well, detransitioners exist, so that's at least two transitions.
I mean, I don't know. You have to bring up a specific study because you say you had them, but you never cite them. So
it's not about a study. It's about literally like they have whole forums for detransitioners. It's people who were born a male, they thought they were female, they transitioned to female, then they went back to male. There's like thousands. And then there's also these.
But there's a lot of transgender people. They're not gender fluid.
So no, I agree with you. Actually, a lot of, and that was my first argument, was a lot of transgender people agree with me that there's two sexes. That's literally the reason why they transgender.
Well, I wasn't talking about sex. I was talking about gender, which is about identity.
Yeah, but those are synonymous. Those are synonymous by definition.
So that's where you're wrong, because you even said earlier that you said historically that's the way it's seen as.
It's if you go to Oxford Dictionary right now.
That's okay. Again, that's wrong. I can show you cultures all around the world that had more than one gender.
So what do you say about the transgender people, the Oxford Dictionary, and the rest of the American people that see them as synonymous? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I can say they're wrong. I mean, it's like asking me like, what do I do?
So half the country's wrong.
It's like asking, what if half the country believe the world is flat? Like, so what? They're wrong.
That's not
I'm
wrong.
citing the science. Dude, if anybody says that historically there were only two genders and that's the way all cultures saw it, they are objectively wrong. I can literally list you the different cultures all around the world.
They're not wrong because they define gender as being synonymous with sex. That's the problem. Same with the Oxford Dictionary.
They are wrong because
are there more than two sexes?
They are wrong because their view does not map to, like you were saying, objective empirical reality. That's why they're wrong.
How is there not objective empirical reality for two sexes? That's what every biology teacher teaches.
Who said that there wasn't objective empirical reality for two sexes? Did I say that?
So you believe that that's the case?
Okay, but okay. What I asked. Okay,
there's literally professors.
What I was. Okay, no. Okay, no. What I brought up was the fact that historically there are cultures all around the world that had two genders. And then you ask me, how do I not believe in objective reality for two sexes? Think about that.
Gender and sex.
Okay, I was talking about genders, the way gender usage.
Those are synonymous. The sex and gender are synonymous. That's my whole point.
We just brought about how sex in biology is described about two gametes.
Do you know how many characteristics of sex manifest in gender? It's literally, that's why I'm saying like
Okay,
they're
we're-
largely synonymous, except for abnormalities, similar to someone born with 3 fingers versus 5. So you can always go back to the exception to the rule.
I'm not going to the exception. Like I can list you like a dozen or so cultures all around the world.
Yeah, and I
that
can
have-
list you the top biologists in the world that believe there's 2 sexes. Now, what we
So
call a sex,
sex is determined by the gamete size. So like again, we weren't talking about the sex. We're talking about the gender.
the gender by definition is synonymous. That's what I've been saying
And that,
the whole time.
and so like you're quoting an Oxford dictionary, and dictionaries
Yes.
the dictionaries describe common uses. They describe how words are used. They do not
So-
prescribe.
So let me put this into context. You understand that I'm coming to you anonymously, that there were top lawyers in their fields testifying in front of Congress that men can have babies. What I'm saying is that you guys are discounting the entirety of everyone else in the country that understand, including transgender people, that understand gender and sex to be synonymous by the definition currently in the Oxford Dictionary. Like,
So
how is that not prejudice?
So here's
How
what
is
I'm
that not
saying.
bias?
So this is what I'm saying. So this
Can
is
we not have a little bit of understanding for each
so
other?
here's the thing. So like,
Holy cow!
what your argument is a total red herring, right?
Not a
So
red herring.
whether or not people will fire you for a belief has literally nothing to do with whether or not gender is based in the identity that's in their brain. It's totally irrelevant. I mean, like that's argument. It's just a non
No, getting fired for biological facts is a problem. That is a straight up problem.
Sure, being
someone
fired
from
for
Google
being fired for biological fact is a problem. It's totally irrelevant to the point that I was trying to make.
It's not, because biological facts mapped gender. You cannot say that men and women do not exist absent of biological sex. That in itself is a fallacy.
So your argument. So gender maps to.
You want to talk about the
gender?
Mechanics?
You're saying gender is synonymous with sex.
They are.
And the
by
proof
definition.
of that. The proof of that is people go to Congress and testify things, and people get fired for things.
Well, no, people go to Congress and testify assertions dogmatically without question
that was
that
your
men
argument.
can have babies. That's not a reasonable argument to make in front of Congress when half the country does not agree with you.
Who gets to define the term sex?
So I can answer that. So the
biologists.
No. So they're using a biological definition. Then sure, the biologists would, but it depends. Dictionaries describe common usage. They do not prescribe usage. They describe it. So
we can break it down.
No,
break it down. What does a male and a man have in common?
I was answering his question. So the way a word when a dictionary says a word means this, they're describing how society uses that.
Yeah,
that's my point. And that can change over time. And
sure, I agree.
Well, that kind of debunks what you were saying earlier about words having intrinsic
meaning. I'm not trying to say that that's the truth necessarily, although I do believe that. Here's my truth statement, right?
I'll let you get the last word, and I got to get ready to.
Yeah, you have the last word, and you can also plug something if you like, and we'll both just shut up.
No, I appreciate you guys' argument because it's really necessary right now, and although it may seem like I'm extremely convinced of my views, I'm always open to believing that what I'm saying isn't necessarily true. So the last thing I'll say is, if you believe that gender and sex are synonymous, regardless of the fact that one is a concept and one is an empirical set of attributes, then we understand that the empirical attributes of male/man are different. It's not that they're better than woman/female. And it's not that there's a gradient of those both that coincide with each other. It's just the fact that there's a simple biological fact that there's a male and there's a woman. Male, female, woman, man. And really, I think our argument with each other was, to what extent does the gender map to the reality of the empirical world? And that's the heart of the debate. And we can continue that if you'd like. And there's more smarter people than me on this. And I'm just some person who has an opinion. But anyway, the point is, you guys made these fantastic arguments, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. But the last thing I'll plug is my Twitter handle, Morefreeus01 on Twitter. If you want to follow me, it's kind of a new account. Other than that, I'll open up the floor to everyone else to give their final counter argument and stuff.
It may get ready to boot us out in the stream because it's about to turn 7:30, and I want to keep you on just for like 1 minute afterwards, and we could discuss something off air about next week.
Morefreeus. Is it 01?
Yeah, 01's the Twitter handle. Morefreeus01.
Morefreeus01. All right, it's 7:30. We're gonna wrap that up. Stay tuned. We will give another announcement. Appreciate you guys tuning in, asking questions, giving comments and feedback. We will see you guys next week.